I, Douglas Ducote, an American patriot by the grace of God, do solemnly swear to support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America from enemies foreign and especially domestic. I, Douglas Ducote, an American patriot by the grace of God, do solemnly swear to support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America from enemies foreign and especially domestic. Say it with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Hello, American Patriots, and welcome to a special edition, weekend edition of the Douglas Ducote Show. Today marks 77 years since the biggest devastation on planet Earth took place. And sadly, we're closer to annihilation due to nuclear weapons than we were 77 years ago. On August 6, 1945, the United States dropped an atomic bomb on the city of Hiroshima 77 years ago today. The bomb was known as Little Boy, a uranium gun-type bomb that exploded with about 13 kilotons of force. At the time of the bombing, Hiroshima was home to 280 to 290,000 civilians, as well as 43,000 service members. Between 90,000 and 166,000 people are believed to have died from the bomb in the 4-month period following the explosion. The U.S. Department of Energy has estimated that after 5 years, there were perhaps another 200,000 or more fatalities as a result of that bomb being dropped. While the city of Hiroshima has estimated that 237,000 people were killed directly or indirectly by the bomb's effect, including burns, radiation sickness, and cancer. The bombing of Hiroshima, codenamed Operation Centerboard, was approved by Curtis LeMay on August 4th of 1945. The B-29 plane that carried Little Boy from Titan Island in the Western Pacific to Hiroshima was known as the Enola Gay. And today, the Enola Gay is on display at the Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C. It was named after the pilot's mother, along with Tibbets, the pilot, co-pilot Robert Lewis, bombardier Tom Freeby, navigator Theodore Van Kirk, and tail gunner Robert Caron were among the others on board the Enola Gay. Here are their eyewitnesses' accounts of the first atomic bomb dropped 77 years ago today. From the pilot, Paul Tibbets, we turned back to look at Hiroshima. The city was hidden by an awful cloud, bowling up, mushrooming, terrible and incredibly tall. No one spoke for a moment. Then everyone was talking. I remember co-pilot Robert Lewis pounding on my shoulder, saying, "Look at that, look at that, look at that." Bombardier Tom Freeby wondered about whether radioactive would make us all sterile. Lewis said he could taste atomic fission. He said it tasted like lead. Navigator Theodore Van Kirk recalls the shock waves from the explosion. It was very much as if you've ever sat on an ash can or a trash can and had somebody hit it with a baseball bat. The plane bounced, it jumped, and there was a noise like a piece of sheet metal being snapped. Those of us who had flown quite a bit over Europe thought it was anti-aircraft fire that had exploded very close to our airplane. On viewing the atomic fireball, I don't believe anyone ever expected to look at a sight quite like that. Where we had seen a clear city 2 minutes ago, we could now no longer see the city. We could see smoke and fires creeping up the side of the mountains. Tail Gunner Robert Caron said, "The mushroom itself was a spectacular sight, a bubbling mass of purple-gray smoke, and you could see it had a red core in it, and everything was burning inside. As we got further away, we could see the base of the mushroom, and below we could see what looked like a few 100-foot layers of debris and smoke, and what have you. I saw fires springing up in different places, like flames shooting up on a hot bed of coals. 6 miles below the crew of the Enola Gay, the people of Hiroshima were waking up and preparing for their daily routines. It was 8:16 a.m. Up to that point, the city had been largely spared by the rain of conventional air bombing that had ravaged many other Japanese cities. Rumors abound as to why this was so, from the fact that many Hiroshima residents had emigrated to the U.S. to the supposed presence of President Truman's mother in the area. Still, many citizens, including school children, were prepared for future in the bombing by tearing down houses to create fire lanes that would kill them. And it was at this task that many were laboring or preparing to labor on the morning of August 6th. Just an hour before air raid sirens had sounded as a single B-29, the weather plane for the little boy mission, approached Hiroshima. A radio broadcast announced the sight of the Enola Gay soon after 8 a.m. And they thought it was just going to be conventional bombs again, as we had been dropping across Japan. The city of Hiroshima was annihilated by the explosion. 70,000 to 76,000 buildings were damaged or destroyed, and 48,000 of those were entirely razed. Survivors recall the incredible experience of seeing that the city had ceased to exist anymore. 3 days after the United States dropped the atomic bomb on Hiroshima, a second atomic bomb was dropped on Nagasaki on August 9th. It was a 21-kiloton plutonium device known as Fat Man. On the day of the bombing, an estimated 263,000 were in Nagasaki, including 240,000 Japanese residents, 9,000 Japanese soldiers, and sadly, 400 prisoners of war. Prior to August 9th, Nagasaki had been the target of small-scale bombing by the United States. Though the damage from these bombings was relatively small, it created considerable concern in Nagasaki, and many people were evacuated to rural areas for safety, thus reducing the population in the city at the time of the nuclear attack. It is estimated that between 40,000 and 75,000 people died immediately following the atomic explosion, while another 60,000 people suffered severe injuries. Total deaths by the end of 1945 may have reached 80,000 people. The decision to use the second bomb was made on August 7th, 1945, on the island of Guam. Its use was calculated to indicate that the United States had an endless supply of the new weapon for use against Japan, and that the United States would continue to drop atomic bombs on Japan until the country surrendered unconditionally. The city of Nagasaki, however, was not the primary target of this second atomic bomb. Instead, officials had selected the city of Koura, where Japan had one of its largest munition plants. Because of a heavy overcast of clouds, the crew was unable to drop the bomb, so they diverted to a secondary target, which was Nagasaki. At 10:58 a.m. local time, the airplane boxcar visually dropped Fat Man. It exploded 43 seconds later with a blast yield equivalent to 21 kilotons of TNT at an altitude of 1,650 feet, about 1.5 miles northwest of the intended aiming point. The radius of total destruction of the atomic blast was about 1 mile, followed by fires across the northern portion of the city to 2 miles south to where the bomb had been dropped. In contrast to many modern aspects of Hiroshima, almost all of the buildings in Nagasaki were of old-fashioned Japanese construction, consisting of wood or wood-framed buildings with wood walls and tall roofs. Many of the smaller industries and business establishments were also situated in buildings of wood or other material not designed to withstand any type of explosion. As a result, the atomic bomb explosion over Nagasaki nearly leveled every structure in the blast radius. Today, my friends, the nuclear weapons that we have on planet Earth by many different countries make the atomic bombs we dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki look like a firecracker. There are enough atomic bombs right here on planet Earth to annihilate every single one of us, sadly. There's many debates about whether or not we should have used the atomic bomb. And most people point to the fact that Japan was unwilling to surrender. And had we continued a conventional war, it would have drug out for many more years, and hundreds of thousands of service members on both sides would have perished. So in its own way, dropping those two bombs saved many more lives. It's very hard to understand that and grasp that concept of how making something that's so destructive and does so much damage was a good thing. For that brief moment in time during World War II, at least it brought Japan to the table for an unconditional surrender, ending the war we had with them. But sadly, we would go on to continue to build more nuclear weapons, bigger nuclear weapons, stronger nuclear weapons, and then other countries would follow suit. Today, the country with the most nuclear weapons on planet Earth is not America, it's Russia. Followed second by us, and then many other countries now have that ability. And other countries that have vowed to make nuclear weapons and use them to attack us and our allies are ongoing right now, such as with Iran and North Korea. If they do actually fall through or go through, with the production of their nuclear weapons, Iran has already threatened to wipe Israel off the face of the earth. And North Korea has threatened many times to attack America with their nuclear weapons. Something as horrible and as devastating in one hand, yet save lives in the other, put us into what we know as the Cold War, a war of wondering when and if someone would push the button to fire the first nuclear weapon again. God help us if that ever happens. You can find more stories about the atomic weapons all over the internet. Where I got this information is in the description below, where you can see it for yourself and read more about both of those atomic weapons. As always, please say a prayer for our men and women serving in the United States military, our veterans, our law enforcement officers, our first responders and their families, our angel families, our blue and gold star families, and our country. May God see to it that no country ever attempts again to use a nuclear weapon. And with God's assistance, maybe, just possibly, more and more countries will wake up to the realization that this is not a good thing. Thank you. God bless you, and I hope you all have a wonderful and blessed evening.